Hi, my name is Josh Foster, clearly the city manager for the city of Kenai, obviously. And today I will be showing you guys, the residents of the city of Kenai, the global climate and the Alaska climate and how they have changed and how they relate to one another. So let me start out with showing you this plot of the global temperature time series in my Unit 13 investigation. And it shows here that in the northern extratropics, which is of course Alaska's in the north, the trend from 1880 to 2020 has shown that it has gone up and increased significantly in the last around 50 or 60 years. In the tropics and the southern extratropics, the same thing is happening, but not to the same degree. They start a bit higher, but they kind of flatten out a bit more. So I'd say that as far as the north, the global temperature time plot here shows that it goes way up and temperatures are increasing. That's the climate change that I'm going to show. Something else interesting here is the annual temperature trend in the past 50 years from the Alaska Center for Climate and Assessment Policy in the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And in the past 50 years, it shows right here that from 1970 to 2019, or basically from 1970 to now, that the upper regions are warming up a lot faster than the lower regions of Alaska. But the same thing still goes. We're warming up really fast up here. The climate is changing super fast. And it shows an increase of 3.7 degrees Fahrenheit in the Kenai / Anchorage region. And that's absolutely insane. Up here it's 6.2, down here it's about 3.7, and of course as you go lower it goes down to like 2.5. Kodiak here is about 3.3, but we are 3.7 degrees Fahrenheit up from 1970, which just goes to show that Alaska's climate is changing, and that corresponds directly back here to the global temperature time series, where it shows that in the last 50 years we have shot up by, what would that be, around almost an entire degree Celsius, which of course would kind of show or would kind of prove that Kenai has gone up by 3.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, 3.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and also 6.2 up here. And as we go farther north, it becomes a lot more clear that the climate's changing by a lot. So the next part I'm going to show right here is the Unit 14 investigation. Here's a little slideshow that I prepared, and it shows the temperature for low emissions or representative concentration pathway 4.5, which is a scenario in which it shows relatively low emissions throughout the 21st century. And it shows each decade right here, including historical. And it shows the temperature modeled in degrees Celsius and how it gets higher. And these are the high emissions, or if the representative concentration pathway was 8.5. So if the emissions were 8.5 instead of 4.5, so obviously much higher. And again, low emissions for precipitation and high emissions for precipitation in each scenario happening again. Same thing, RCP 8.5 and RCP 4.5, except this time it's precipitation. So the questions on procedure A for temperature show that the plots for temperatures display the monthly temperatures in Kenai, Alaska in degrees Celsius for the historical period and for 2-decade periods in the 21st century. One plot shows the future projections for RCP 4.5, the emissions keep lowering, and the other shows it for RCP 8.5, the emissions keep rising, for 5 different climate model predictions. The temperatures will rise every month of the year for each decade period. The temperatures get higher, and of course it shows right here that they get higher. The trend is that they get higher, and of course when the emissions get higher, then everything spikes even higher. For temperatures especially, and temperatures will rise during every month of the year, and it increases more in the summer months in 2090 to 2099, that decade, the very last decade, but the largest increase in temperature happens during the winter months, and the emission level rising shows an increase in temperatures. Now, as for precipitation, the plots for precipitation show the monthly precipitation levels in millimeters in Kenai, Alaska for the historical period, as well as for decade periods in the 21st century. One plot shows the future projections for RCP 4.5 emissions lowering over time and RCP 8.5 emissions increasing over time, or of course just 4.5 and 8.5 for 5 different climate model projections. As temperature increases, evaporation increases, and as precipitation plots the precipitation plots agree with this because the precipitation increases each decade for most months. The emission levels rising show an increase in precipitation in most months except for June, July, and September, which even then still shows a general trend of it just all kind of increasing. Because again, increase in temperature, increase in evaporation, increase in precipitation. So changes in temperature and precipitation can lead to many different impacts, especially in Kenai. As temperature rises, the polar sea ice can begin to melt and recede back, causing a rise in the average sea levels across many different parts of the world, which would not be very good for Kenai because we are right on the ocean, right on the river. We are largely based off fishing, so that would not be very good. Increased temperature also means increased evaporation, which also means an increase in precipitation. This may benefit farmers as more rain and increased temperatures, especially in the valley, Palmer, can help elongate the growing season and make them water the crops less. Although an increase in temperature has negligible effects on travel times, or nearly negligible effects, the precipitation it causes through increased evaporation can seriously affect transportation negatively. Dangerous driving conditions with slickness and black ice and everything, and decreased visibility for planes and storms such as small aircraft in the bush are just a few things that can be affected negatively by climate change. The temperatures rising can negatively affect our environment here in Kenai, Alaska through melting glaciers, warmer oceans, and of course storms, like I mentioned before. One solution for climate change that caught my attention was renewable energy. So Alaska has this problem with our economy being largely based on oil and gas. This is very prevalent here, especially in Kenai and Nikiski, and going out towards Nikiski from Kenai. Renewable energy has been going down in price for a while now, and it is incredibly cheap. I believe that replacing our fossil fuels with renewable energy, such as solar panels, taking away oil rigs, etc., would have an amazing impact on our quickly rising temperatures here in the north. The air quality of many of our towns and villages in Alaska here are great because we're out here in the wilderness and people are pretty spread out, but Anchorage and Fairbanks have seen better days, and even Kenai has too. Our air quality isn't as great as it used to be, especially not 30 to 50 years ago. Renewable energy is hard to maintain during the winter months, but if possible, it would seriously benefit Alaska. And also, our economy is largely based off of oil and gas and basically just fossil fuels in general. And I know it's incredibly hard to cut it, but if there was some magical way to do that, it would be absolutely amazing. And I think that there's a possibility that we could start replacing even just small things with renewable energy sources. And back up to here, I was also going to mention how we got these graphs. I believe precipitation is from rain gauges and radiosondes, but especially rain gauges, which can tell you how much precipitation has fallen in the last few days. And of course, you can average that for each month, and temperature can be taken each day from different stations. These can be taken from stations all across Alaska, and then they average all their stuff together, which is really cool. The last thing we're going to mention real quick is a little art and science mixed. So something I learned in my teaching class this semester was place-based learning, or PBL. And in PBL, you involve the local cultures, geography, and other things, including climate and animals, in the curriculum. The lessons are often in the form of field trips, since those are local and aren't always costly for the school district. I believe that art-based activities targeted at elementary school students, K through 6, would be a cool way to introduce them to climate change. Maybe having them learn about climate change from a specialist would be an interesting way of telling them all about climate change and solutions. I know that kids are always taught to recycle at a young age, but that's not going to save the earth on its own. Teach them about it in a lesson or bring someone in. Give them a puppet show presentation or have them draw pictures of climate change solutions. I know that would probably be boring for older elementary schoolers, but kindergartners would definitely have a blast. I'm sure. They don't really care. The only problems I could see for this are the climate change deniers not allowing their kids to participate in global warming activities and the time and money for setting this project / lesson up. I think it's cool because I did a lot of similar things in elementary school with different subjects, such as sorry, Alaska Native cultures, so it would be easy to teach kids how climate change works and its effective solutions or how they can help. And that's about all I have to say.